Pont du Gard is an impressive bridge part of the Nimes Aqueduct in France. It is some 50 meters high, that means the height of a 15-storied building. Some of the stones that it is made of reach the approximate weight of 6 tons. It is of course a tourist attraction, and besides the bridge itself, the tourists are invited to visit also the quarries where supposedly these blocks came from. So what we see over there, look at the high wall where the stone was cut off. It is at least some, I don't know, 6 meters high or something like that, and it's perfectly straight. It has also a very regular straight angle. And this is not how it should look like if our current idea, the mainstream historians' current idea of how stone was quarried in those times is correct. Here is a demonstration of how they think it was done. The same chaotic marks and small pieces and steps on the quarry walls we see also depicted in the museum that is devoted to this aqueduct, but the actual walls have nothing to do with this. The marks are not chaotic and the walls are dead straight. So we don't know even how did they quarry the stone actually. Here are some more strange quarry marks from Egypt, also supposedly from a Roman quarry. And probably you remember the clearly machine marks on the walls of the Chinese grottos from the previous episodes. Also interesting marks are found in the Bibemos caves of France. Is it possible to make them with chisel? Yes, but how come they are so long? We still have a lot to learn. Let's have a look at the famous Segovia aqueduct in Spain. We simply ignore the so-called history of probably, maybe, and should have been built by Romans and so on. If we simply have a look at the structure, we'll see that it is absolutely in the same style and built using the same technique as all those amazing megaliths in Peru, Egypt and Khmer Kingdom that many consider marvelous and even try to attribute to aliens. Gigantic blocks and no mortar in between them, which is a typical hallmark of those so-called alien constructions or mysterious megaliths, ancient mysteries, and so-called labels. And by the way, the blocks that it is made of are seriously heavy. Look at the size of the people next to them. Compare them. This is an enormous construction. It is advanced engineering applied. And what do the historians tell us? How did they stack them with such amazing accuracy on the top of each other? Well, they don't bother with such details, you know, they concentrate on the sexual adventures of the members of the Roman Senate. And it's not just about the dragging and lifting the stones. Also, they fit each other with amazing accuracy. We have discussed many times that manual polishing of this type is just really insane work. A small factory of men would need 1 month per block just to polish the internal sides of the stones that nobody sees. And they must be polished perfectly to fit each other in this way. If you take the supposed population of Spain at that time and see if they were all busy only polishing the internal sides of the blocks for all the so-called Roman buildings in Spain, you will reach nowhere. I tried such calculations for the Khmer Kingdom, and the results were very illustrative, showing the ridiculousness of all these fantasies that are served to us as so-called scientific history. And by the way, the very structure of the aqueducts is very vulnerable. It's not a stable one, like, for example, in the case of the pyramids. They could fall very easily unless some really advanced engineering calculations were not made. Don't forget, these are stones standing like this supposedly for 2000 years without any mortar between them. How come we are being told that we are more advanced nowadays and our houses fall apart after 100 years and these structures are still standing for 2000 years? Well, I personally don't think that they are 2000 years old, that they are much more recent, but I'm just exposing the ridiculousness of the main stories, history stories, fantasy jokes. Actually, there are many more serious reasons for which the aqueducts, some of the so-called Roman aqueducts, could be classified in one category with the so-called mystery alien megaliths around the world. Do you notice the square or rectangular holes on the walls of the aqueduct? Well, they are a hallmark for all the mystery megaliths. Here they can be seen on the American megaliths, and here they can be seen in the ancient quarry again of Aswan in Egypt. It really seems that pieces of wood were inserted in them for scaffolding or moving purposes, or it was just part of the mold that they were using to cast whatever was made of geopolymer. I'm not saying everything is made of geopolymer, just most of the so-called mystery megaliths. This is an image from the Temple Mount of Jerusalem, same gigantic megaliths, and right in the middle you see a piece of petrified wood still sticking out of the wall, and of course same rectangular holes in the wall. Some medieval paintings confirm the same, that some sort of wooden structures were kept in place or were kept as a scaffolding and were inserted in those holes. And most importantly, we definitely see signs of polygonal masonry on the aqueducts, so they can be surely classified as mystery megaliths. Because, as we have covered already many times, nobody nowadays is able to demonstrate how you can achieve polygonal masonry with simple or even advanced tools in some more complex cases. Now, on the next two images, besides the distinctive parallel straight machine marks, you also see drill holes, numerous drill holes. Well, if this is all geopolymer, that would explain the drill holes. Although it looks like stone in this case because of the marks, same in the quarry and same on the stones. So what kind of drill machines were the Romans using? Another aqueduct in Spain. It has the emblem of the double-headed eagle on its very top, the emblem of the Empire of the Survivors, the state emblem. And not only these aqueducts are still standing, supposedly after 2000 years, but even a shorter period is quite an achievement for such a vulnerable structure. But also they are the particular slant, the angle, because they are at a slight angle for the water to flow, is minute, some 1 or 2 degrees over the full bridge. So how could the ancient engineers, supposedly armed with very simple tools, could achieve such accuracy? Of course, you will find a lot of probably and should have been and all that, but you will never find a single demonstration of how they did it. And yet another aqueduct in France. I feel like I'm in Peru from these photos, but this is a French aqueduct. And do you notice the protrusions that stick out from the stones? I think this is, it really looks like it is cast out of something. Well, same protrusions are those seen on the mystical so-called alien megaliths in all over the world. This is from South America. They are on the Great Pyramid in Egypt and everywhere else. It is obvious that we have a single worldwide culture building megalithic structures using the same technology over and over again. Most of the aqueduct information that I have presented so far is taken from this blog. And by the way, I have excellent news for those of you who have contacted me and want further resources to study the history of the survivors by themselves. I have been using various blogs in Russian as a material for the previous episodes and the future ones, but they were rather scattered, and just recently, in the last month or so, these people have organized themselves and have made a website, and here are the contributors. Not all of their previous, actually none of their previous, almost none of their previous work is included in this website. Only whatever they submit in the future will be included. You can find who they are and find out their blogs and find tons and tons of information. Much more than I have seen, and many times more that is included in the Survivor series. Really interesting stuff. So these are the people. Probably, let's say, half of the survivors so far, the information has been based on the foundation of Fomenko's work, and some, let's say, 30% more would be from these people. Okay, so we saw how some of the so-called Roman megaliths perfectly qualify for the category of advanced ancient engineering, mystery megalithic structures that we cannot reproduce nowadays with primitive means, although we are being assured that this is how they were erected. And not only that, there is no confirmed information about who and when built them. They are only guesses. The official history only offers us maybe, probably, and must have been. Same like the others. Then why the mystery searchers don't try to connect them again with aliens? Or that supposedly mysterious civilization that got submerged in water 10,000 years ago. Maybe because these aqueducts feed the water to so-called Roman cities. Well, the other megaliths are also connected with absolutely down toward the settlements of the corresponding cultures that they belong to. So just the connection with a city that is not extremely ancient is not a reason enough for itself. For the very same reason, those same mystery searchers also ignore the amazing megaliths of Japan. They look and feel the same, exactly like the mystery megaliths of Egypt and Peru, but they are not classified as mystic. Why? What is the reason? The reason is that the majority of the so-called alternative researchers nowadays are trying to add unexisting cultures to the so-called established history. They're trying to add something new instead of correcting the historical fictions that are presented to us as history. And in this way, they end up in the silly predicament like that of the tailor who complained, "Oh, it's really bad. I'm cutting these trousers already 4 times and they're still short." And yes, the trousers will be always short. No matter what kind of suggestions and ideas we try to add to the false history, it will never make it right. We really need to establish the full history in its correct and genuine form. Only then we will know the truth. I'm not against the aliens theory. Aliens were and are still actively visiting us nowadays, but it is a mistake to attribute every single thing to them. Most of the so-called aliens were our own forefathers. It was us before we were downgraded to our current deplorable state, and if we want to get our magic powers back, the first step is admitting of what has happened. There is nothing shameful to be in first grade. Pupils who are just starting their education are not bad because they don't know anything. Indeed, it is a praiseworthy that they are willing to go to school and learn. If we want to become those magical gods that move megalithic stones just with the powers of their hands, the first step to doing that is to understand that we need to go to school to become real humans and get enrolled in first grade. So how were the megalithic aqueducts built? Did the so-called Romans, some of them still possess the knowledge, like the Hyperborean shamans who could probably move the megalithic stones with the powers in their hands or aided by sound technology, something like that? Or did they degrade enough to use other means? Like, for example, somebody suggested that in all these holes, metal, parts were included, and then the stones were dragged to the place using water channels or something like that. That maybe could explain something like this huge dam in Russia. But wouldn't be very useful concerning the high 20-storied building height aqueducts in Europe. So we really don't know. I mean, the actual books from Roman times are either really burned or locked up in Vatican or other places. We basically do not have genuine writings from that time. So the answer is we don't know. It is hidden from us. As our magical abilities have been artificially suppressed, time to time they surface, at least in a vague form. Some humans still manifest such powers, not very strongly, but still. Have a look at Nigel Kulagina, who has been showing her abilities many times in front of scientific gatherings in Moscow and other most prestigious scientific communities. This is not some sort of circus tricks or trickery. She is moving objects just with the power of her hands. She further demonstrates it when the objects are below a glass screen because uh, people are just trained to accept such things as untrue and tricks, even without any reason for doubting them. Also, the power waves emitted from her hands are clearly visible on the scientific test devices in the laboratories where she has been tested. Or maybe when I repeat so many times that the answer is in the use of our electromagnetic powers, maybe the term I'm using is after all correct, because you see, the powers from her hands are definitely moving the compass pointers, so magnetic is very, very relevant. Another interesting fact is that after such demonstrations, she loses a lot of weight drastically. Well, she's no longer alive, but the records say even a few kilos all of a sudden after such a demonstration. So that can make us think that we are dealing of transformation of energy. From one type it turns into another type of energy. And what is the conclusion? That after all, those legends that tell us about the magician who moves stones with the powers in their hands seem to be much more possible and closer to the truth than the fairy tales of the modern so-called historians who have nothing tangible behind their theories that honestly begin with probably and must have been and should have been and most likely, other such expressions. I mean, ascribing all these aqueducts to the Romans is absolutely groundless. They have no authentic writing from the Romans at all. All these books that they are telling us are written by Roman authors, we saw in the previous episodes, are medieval creations of a bunch of Jesuit monks who did not even hide that, yes, in some cases they did have notebooks that they edited according to their idea of how the correct history should look like, and this is a mainstream fact by itself. So when they quote them as Roman books, this is just fraud. They are not. They are medieval editions of old books. And that is again in the best case. In the worst case, the so-called Roman books were simply written in the Renaissance period, just a couple of 100 years ago. And in the list of the contributors of the new chronology, a list that I supplied in the episode that was devoted to this topic, if you read that external link list, you will find many independent researchers, not only nowadays but also throughout history, discovering that the so-called Roman books were written very, very recently and not written by so-called Roman authors. I asked the following question anonymously. This person did not know anything about me or my work. I asked the historian the following question: why do you tell to the public that the books on which you base your descriptions of the so-called Roman Empire, why do you call them and present them as written by Roman authors when indeed they were written by Jesuit monks very recently? His answer was, no, this is not exactly true. They are authentic old books, some 2000 years old, and these are the Vindulanda tablets and the Oxyrhynchus papyri from Egypt. So that means, because they found two collections that they date 1,000 years ago, that's their own dating, and that's a proof that all the other literature that addresses the same subject is also genuine. I mean, that means that what I'm saying is true. He basically did not provide any answer to my question. He just gave a suggestion. Oh yes, we have two even genuine old works. So I studied all the information I could find about the English Vindolanda tablets and the Egyptian Oxyrhynchus papyri and asked him the next question. Thank you very much for providing this information. However, I don't see how these two collections of work have been at all incorporated in the history that is presented to us as history of the so-called Roman Empire. In the Vindolanda tablets, there is no history, almost no history. I could not find practically any. If there was any, it was formatted before it is given to us, or it was simply removed away so that it doesn't reveal the real history. So that's not included in history. Our history is not based on that. Oxyrhynchus papyri, I asked him, how did Oxyrhynchus papyri serve in any way in forming the stories that we are being told? Is there any connection? And what? He just skipped the question. He pretended as if he didn't hear it. And yet other tablets were supposedly found just a couple of years ago in excavations of Roman London. Where are they? Is there any photos published or anything? Or are they still under formatting? Or do they reveal things about history that cannot even be formatted, so they're just locked up? Where are they? After publishing my episode on Oxyrhynchus papyri and the Vindolanda tablets, I received an insulting email by a YouTube user who called me stupid and other abuses because, according to him, I could not understand the simple fact that books cannot survive 2000 years, and that is why we do not have any originals. Actually, he is commenting his own fantasies because if he had listened to my video, I explained that I defend the opinion that they are not 2000 years old and the culture that we call Roman flourished around very roughly 1000 years ago. Second of all, books have survived from those times, and these are the Vindolanda tablets and Oxyrhynchus papyri. And by the way, for example, Oxyrhynchus papyri were under the rain in a garbage pile for such a long time, and they're still there. So why not books that were carefully kept in libraries would not survive from those times? Apparently, it is apparently possible. And then next, when I say that they burnt in libraries, I'm commenting on the official version that is presented to us by the so-called historians. That is their explanation, that after the monks made the copies, the fires devoured the originals. And because such trolling is becoming very abundant lately, these are simply distractions to distract the actual users from my content. And that's why they comment on their own fantasy and not my content. Why is he not giving a reply, for example, that on my claims that the Roman culture is much more recent? No, he's commenting his own claims. And that is why I'm not planning to enable comments on my videos. Current mainstream historians assure us that the Roman culture, Roman Empire is very well studied, very well documented in the smallest details. And that is why they peacefully spend their time in their leather chairs doing copy and paste from existing sources. Nowadays this is so much easier, just 2 clicks and you have a content copied from another one who is sitting in such leather chair. And as far as field research, no, they don't bother. This is just a headache. Moreover, those artifacts, they don't fit even the history they're preaching. This they call map of Roman aqueducts. In small letters they say, well, we have included only the major ones. Some small ones could be missed out, and because of this small print, furthermore, without any pang of conscience, they just exclude all the aqueducts that don't fit their fabricated history. There are tons of aqueducts in America, particularly in Mexico. They have built using the absolutely same technology and even architectural style as the aqueducts that are labeled as Roman. I don't really believe that the so-called colonialists were building them for the local population that they were mercilessly murdering, by the way, at that time. Furthermore, there are notes suggesting that the cities of the so-called ancient American native empires were already using aqueducts. This is some 4 or 5 centuries old map, and the Mexico City is already fed water with the aqueducts. There are old notes suggesting that the Aztecs also had aqueducts long before the supposed arrival of the colonialists. Here is a supposedly ancient sculpture stone head. There are many of them in America with a Christian cross on it. So people knew about Christianity. They were part of this so-called Roman culture, and that's why they were building Roman aqueducts. This one was supplying water to a native city. This is the Mexico aqueduct. Well, to prevent people from thinking too much and knowing too much about their real history, they did not include any of the American aqueducts in their map. These are aqueducts from the Azore Islands. That must have not been part of the Roman Empire. Delete from the map, and problem is easily solved. People just don't think about such things, and so another Roman aqueduct in Moscow, that was not part of the Roman Empire. Don't include it in the map, and it's all fine. And now a Roman aqueduct in Sevastopol. Well, the Roman soldiers must have built it while being on an international excursion. But probably the biggest ones are around Istanbul. Although most of them are completely or partially destroyed, still whatever remains is very impressive. And so are the underground water reservoirs, the cisterns in Istanbul. Those are vast. They are approximately 10 meters deep and would be of an area 100 by 100 meters. The biggest one is 244 meters on the side. It's actually like another city below the city of Istanbul. And they're still in pretty much excellent condition for their age especially. And although the Istanbul aqueducts are not excluded from the aqueduct map, still they are not given enough attention to artificially underline the importance of Rome in Italy as supposedly center of the Roman culture. While in reality, most likely, we're gonna look more into it in the future episodes, it was just one of the centers. Initially, it was a pretty small town, and at the later stages of the deterioration of Roman culture, it became more prominent. But in no way it can be called the capital of the Roman culture. If there was any capital at all, or any single center at all, it would have been Istanbul. So these Roman-style aqueducts were extremely sophisticated engineering achievements. The biggest one found, underground only I mean, is almost 200 kilometers long and goes through solid bedrock. Well, there could be others, but there isn't actually much endeavor done into researching. Only the Germans are digging a little bit, searching for such things. But in general, well, why bother? Because the more complex aqueducts they found on underground, the more difficult it becomes to explain how did those supposedly primitive people did it. Digging such a tunnel in solid bedrock is quite an engineering achievement even for us nowadays. Mainstream historians assure us, oh, we know everything in detail about the Roman Empire. Romans invented even kissing. They even have on a record what was the performance action all about in most of the performances in the amphitheaters. What a detail! They even knew the play that was playing. So maybe they knew something about how the megalithic aqueducts were built. Oh no, nothing about that. Not usually they would even say probably this or that emperor or must have been. They have no even clue who built them even at all. How is it possible that they know such details about the love advances of all these senators and about who was playing what in every play, and zero information on how, who, or when built the megalithic aqueducts? Isn't that strange? Don't you find it strange? Actually, there are teams of professional historians who supposedly do that all day. They try to reverse the Roman engineering. And where have they reached in their research? At zero they have reached. Usually they distract our attention with models. Oh yes, with toy models I can build even rockets and all kinds of fantastic things, if you believe me that it will really fly you to Neptune and Pluto tomorrow, or teleport you to 10 different galaxies the day after. It all works so easily with toys, huh? About real things, well, no, not yet. They're excellent when it comes to talking. They will assure you that they know each and everything. But when it comes to demonstration, they will build only small things. Yes, they can lift some stones, but this in no way can lift megalithic stones at the height of 20-storied building and stack them with such an amazing accuracy that you cannot even insert a sheet of paper in between the stones. And it's not only that, they have tested these devices. They know very well that they cannot build the megalithic aqueducts because during tests they fail bigger loads and still they mislead the general population with their information, especially on TV, the main washing machine for consciousness. I saw an amazing brainwashing documentary produced by BBC where a lady, supposedly scientist, was swearing up and down how the Romans had machines that would cut the stone powered by water. She was standing there and explaining here was the water mill, and here the water was moving one wheel, and then it was moving the other one, and here were the discs that were cutting the stone. But wait a minute, tests have been done, and it doesn't work like that on granite because they tested with cutting discs that are, you know, really primitive. You need diamonds, this type of technology, and moreover you need monstrous power that cannot be supplied simply by a stream of water. And I have read reports that really attempts have been made to construct such machines, and it was an utter failure from the very beginning. Then why do they preach such things on TV? Things that they have tested and have verified to be non-working. So they are not satisfied by distracting the public attention by soap opera styles narration about the love adventures in the Roman Senate. That is not enough. They are also actively defrauding people with various extremely misleading documentaries. If you follow this link, it's also in the description, you will see a very informative video by somebody who exposes their scam documentaries. Although they are trying to carve an Egyptian nose, it doesn't matter. But it shows very well what kind of tricks and psychological manipulation they use in order to create the impression that we really know what was life and how much people knew in Roman times and everything else about the Roman Empire to make it look authentic and really historic, and to create the false impression that it is possible with the primitive means to build all these aqueducts that have been labeled as Romans, and we're just opening the theme about Rome. It's not only the aqueducts, everything else as well. As people are starting to question the fabricated history more and more, they try to find out also interesting things about the aqueducts. There are some ideas, they're just now emerging, and that they were not simply for carrying water, because in many cases they cross rivers. Also they supply water to settlements that have a river at their shore, so there was no lack of water anyway. So there are suggestions that they were used for evaporation, to get salt, to get precious metals, or so many other ideas. Well, we'll see what they will find out. This is salt in one of the aqueducts.